Rob Halford is one of the heavy metal legends that everyone should know. Rightfully nicknamed the Metal God, he has always embedded the key traits of the charismatic frontman. He had showcased great skills both in singing and songwriting, and he has achieved a huge success. But behind the success, there's a much deeper and in some cases difficult story to tell. And Rob confesses everything in his autobiography. That is one of the best books I've ever read. Hi all, this is Luca speaking on Music Fingerprints, and in this video I want to cover and introduce you a great book by a legendary metal singer that continues to rock even in his 70s, Rob Halford. I hope you will find the content interesting, and if so, remember to subscribe to the channel, liking this video and share your ideas and thoughts in the comments. In the early 90s, while I was a teenager, metal was mainstream music. I listened to a lot of metal bands, and one of my favorite ones was Skid Row. I questioned their being labeled as hair metal. I thought they were a legit heavy metal act. Anyway, I bought all of the albums and read all the stuff I could find, and I also purchased a couple of VHS cassettes. One of these, Roadkill, was a collection of live performances, and one of them was shot live in MTV Studios in 1992. In this live performance, Skid Row were playing with this other guy singing that I didn't know. The host said he was special guest Rob Halford from the band Fight. He dressed ripped jeans, an open sleeveless sweatshirt, and it didn't light up anything to me. I understood better when I bought and listened to the B-Side Ourselves album that included another live performance of the same song. In the live track, Sebastian Bach introduced him as Rob Halford from Judas Priest, and this triggered something in my head. They performed the song Delivering the Goods from Hellbent for Leather or Killing Machine album. One thing that impressed me about this guy was the range of his voice and the power of his singing. He was surprising. In the following years I increased my musical knowledge, and British Steel and Sad Wings of Destiny by Judas Priest became two of my favorite albums, but I never went more in depth. I didn't listen to the whole Judas Priest catalog, and I was oblivious to their story. During COVID, my music and books consumption escalated a lot. And one day I was looking for books to read on Amazon, and the suggestion appeared for the book Confess by Rob Halford. I ordered it immediately. I loved the couple of albums I owned. I didn't know much about him, so I was curious. At the time, I didn't know that the book had just been released. I didn't know what to expect. What I know now is that I read the whole book in a couple of days, so it's definitely not short. I was captured and I simply couldn't stop reading. The key aspect is that Rob is, of course, a fantastic singer, but is also a great person that poured out his heart and soul in this book. And after reading it, I bought the whole Judas Priest catalog on CD to listen to their music, to relate to what I'd read on the book, and to express appreciation and gratitude to both Rob and his bandmates, to acknowledge that Rob is the metal god. I own the Kindle edition of Confess, so I cannot say anything about the printing, but I can talk about the content. Rob tells us about his whole life as a confession, hence the title. There are some things that transpire from this book, and the first one that clearly emerges is Rob's love for the music and for performing. It might sound trivial, but it's not. It's a love that started at a very young age, an epiphany, as he confirms. He had just started junior school. A teacher was selecting kids for the school choir. Every kid had their turn to sing the proposed song, and when the time came for Rob, he knew and liked the song, so he belted it out. The teacher asked him to do it again, while she played the piano. She then silenced all the other children and asked him to do it again. And at the end of the performance, all the children start clapping. She then brought him to another classroom next door, talked to the other teacher, and asked him to sing again, a cappella this time, and the reaction was the same, and he soaked up the applause. He says that in that moment he thought this was what he wanted to do in life. And it's great to read how, as years passed, he was influenced by the performers that were in England at the time, and how later he loved artists like Hendrix, Mark Bolan and T-Rex, Queen with Freddie Mercury, David Bowie, and it also makes me think what a great time the 60s and the 70s were for music. Rob was born Robert John Arthur Halford on August 25, 1951. He and his parents lived in Walsall in the West Midlands, north of Birmingham. The so-called Black Country at the time was Britain's working class centre, with coal mines and steel factories. We must remember this was right post-World War II, and being an industrial area, it had suffered massive bombings. Rob reminds us how life could be rough at the time, but as he states, as in everyone's life, there's bad things and there's good things. One thing I really enjoyed and that triggered my will to know more about the UK monarchy is the love of Rob for the Queen Elizabeth II. He was 6 years old when the Queen visited Walsall in 1957. He tells how excited he was and that when she waved, he imagined she was waving to him. In the book he tells also a couple of other episodes, like when he met her at Buckingham Palace in 2005. A reception in honor of British music took place, including Brian May and Roger Daltrey. Rob had a chance to meet the Queen, who, after hearing he was part of an heavy metal band, gave him a pained look saying, "Heavy metal, why does it have to be so loud?" And when the Queen died last year, I was moved like everyone, but the first person I thought about was Rob, wondering how he could feel. The music bug never left Rob, who, as a youngster, read NME, Melody Maker, and went to the Isle of Wight festival in 1970. And the bill included The Who and Hendrix, and Rob knew music was calling him. From working in a theater to becoming manager of a menswear store, Rob wanted his future to be in music, and he was a singer in a band. At the time, Judas Priest were already active when he met Ken Downing and Ian Hill, the guy Rob's sister Sue was dating. They had just lost their singer, but they were still eager to continue as they believed in the project, so Rob auditioned and got the gig. Another thing that is clear reading this book that is extremely important and that I find being a common thread for many artists, athletes and successful people in general, when you want something, there's no plan B. Judas Priest struggled the first years, even after their first record, Rock'n'Rolla, came out. They toured in support of it, and while touring was good, album sales never took off. They couldn't even find the record in stores, especially in continental Europe. Money was tight, some of the band members had to find odd part-time jobs, but as we said, there's no plan B when you're driven. And Rob worked as hard as he could on his lyrics to do his part to make it happen. In the book he talks about the work he put into lyrics. He explains how important it has always been for him to write things that made sense, and I really love that he explains some of the lyrics and the experiences that allowed him to develop some of the great songs that we find in Judas Priest albums. So the band worked hard on new songs that then became Sad Wings of Destiny, one of my favorite albums. It even made it to the charts for 1 week, but after that they were still broke and they still pushed. Scene after scene did better and things started rolling. They were signed by a major label, they toured the US as a support act for REO Speedwagon and Foreigner, and they closed the stint in America opening for Led Zeppelin. The trajectory for Priest was upwards and continued this way through great albums. They introduced the leather clothes that then became the image of metal, as well as whips and a Harley Davidson to open the concerts. The trajectory led to worldwide success and recognition. But as it often happens, great highs opened the door to deep lows. Rob was struggling with substances and alcohol abuse, and what's more, in the years he had suffered of severe depression because of his sexuality. He was the poster boy for the macho attitude and stage presence of an high testosterone music like heavy metal. But he was gay. In the book, he describes extremely well the internal struggle he had to face since he was a kid. He had doubts already at 10, and by his teens he knew he was gay, and he tells how it was like to grow up in an environment like post-war England. He had to hide, without any guidance. He was abused. He had to keep everything inside for years, decades at end. And his health paid the toll. After risking his life, Rob entered rehab at the beginning of 1986 and has been sober ever since. And still, he doesn't take his sobriety for granted. He still faces one day at a time. These are more reasons to admire him. Rob lived tough events, both in his private life and with the band, from facing the suicide of his partner at the time to the trial the band had to face in 1990 for the attempted suicide of two young fans. And the pressure was probably too high when in 1991 he decided to separate from Judas Priest and started a solo career. In the book he analyzes the departure and he takes also responsibility for his share. The years outside Judas Priest were in part confused, but in part an occasion for growth. The first Fight solo record had good sales and the tour to support it was successful. So Rob proved he could do it alone. The sequel was not as successful since he changed style and probably fans were looking for more of the same. He then changed project and the next one was 2, that was something completely different that fans didn't really connect to. And during these years, after proving himself he could do well on a solo project, his desire to reunite with Judas Priest continued to grow. One important thing happened when promoting the project too. During a TV interview, Rob came out. It wasn't planned, it wasn't intended, it simply happened. And for all his life, he probably thought it could be a disaster for his career. The metal god is gay. But though a minority of people had something negative to say, the large part of the fans remained fans and nothing changed for them. But Rob was free now and he could feel a sense of relief. I think that was another piece that was falling into place, but still there was a big one missing. The occasion happened for the gold wedding celebration of Rob's parents, because Ken Downing was going to be there. They hadn't talked to each other for like 10 years. They spotted each other, they nodded, and they started talking. Just like that. Just like they'd seen each other every day till the day before. Nothing had changed. Of course, a reunion was not in sight yet, but there was hope. Things unfolded in the following months and the rest is history. As I've already said, I love this book and it allowed me, and it allows every reader, to have a chance to know Rob Halford the man and appreciate how honest he is, how humble he is, and to learn countless lessons from him. I strongly encourage every metal fan, and not only metal fans, to read this book that will make you smile, it will make you think, it will make you feel every sort of emotion, and finally, it will make you grateful. And if you have read this book or if you have found this video interesting, let me know your thoughts in the comments below and like this video for more content like this. I'm Luca, thanking you again for watching and see you soon on Music Fingerprints.